city of Damascus itself. And if the Syrian army and its leaders in the Assad government had hoped to make a final stand in Damascus, then they must have been sorely disappointed to find the city in an uproar. With spidery tendrils of the rebel advance now coming as close as 30 kilometers of Damascus, Syria's capital had been gripped by protesters who'd seen their chance to act. In the suburbs around the city, civilians were observed in dozens of locations, tearing down propaganda, defacing posters and pictures of members of the Assad dynasty, and even toppling a statue of Bashar al-Assad's father, Hafez, within 10 kilometers of the heart of Damascus itself. Meanwhile, rebels weren't just coming from the north via the HTS advance, they were coming from the south by way of the predominantly Jews militias of Daraa and Suwaida, and from the east by way of the US-backed Syrian commandos who had now steamrolled resistance into Palmyra. With Latakia cut off, regime troops couldn't rely on the support of loyalists in that region or of Russian troops located at major air and naval bases. Reports had emerged of mass desertions, with thousands of Syrian troops fleeing the country and many more replacing their uniforms with civilian clothes to join the protesters in the suburbs near the capital. Damascus was on its own, with enemies encroaching from all sides and next to no time to mount a defense. Now, it's about at this time in the rebel offensive that a clear and obvious reality became entirely undeniable, that something was profoundly wrong with Syria's armed forces to allow such a rapid and complete collapse. In fact, by the time the rebels were in range of Damascus, it had become clear just why the Syrian army had collapsed. For one thing, Syria's military had been exposed for its over-reliance on poorly trained young soldiers who had been dragged into service by way of broadly unpopular conscription laws. Those soldiers worked just fine when parked in a certain area and told to go out on patrol, man checkpoints, or at worst point-and-shoot artillery in the direction of some encircled rebel forces. But when they were faced with highly motivated, well-trained and lethal rebels taking part in a mass advance, they crumbled quickly. Nor did they have competent leaders in the field. Syria's lower-level officers are notoriously corrupt and often quite incompetent, and they don't have the critical thinking to be able to react in a coordinated, useful way once things start going sideways. The military relied on static defense positions and the expectation of conventional daytime warfare, leaving them utterly unprepared for asymmetric assaults, the widespread use of drones, or the prowess of HTS's nighttime brigades. The Syrian government was over-reliant on the support of militias that it couldn't actually control, and the country's economic crisis and thriving drug trade meant that the military was weak, underfunded, prone to influence by criminal elements, and generally unable to see the value in fighting for the Assad regime once the going got tough. To summarize the end result, we'll pull one particularly striking quote from The Guardian here. Asked by The Guardian early on Sunday morning what had happened to the tens of thousands of men of the armed forces, pro-government militias, intelligence services, police, and others who had all been dedicated to the preservation of Assad's rule, one veteran Damascus-based analyst gave a terse answer. They have vanished. Every single one. The quote ends. But Syria
there was a gold coin in this bag.
And they too utterly failed to show up in Syria's time of need. The Hezbollah organization has long been among the most powerful forces active in Syria, but those thousands of fighters had mostly traveled back to Lebanon by the time Israel started its ground invasion in the country. Many of them had since died in the fighting, while others were unable or unwilling to get back to Syria in time. Hezbollah's primary backer, Iran, is also Syria's primary backer, but Iran is stretched thin economically, facing geopolitical headwinds, and seemed unwilling to put its interests on the line for Assad. As the city of Homs fell, reports emerged that Iran was in the process of evacuating its personnel and its military advisors, abandoning a 40-year effort to prop up a regime that was, to that point, Iran's closest ally in the Middle East. According to Iranian sources, speaking to the global press, the rapid pace of the regime's collapse had proven too stunning for Iran to keep any level of optimism around Assad's chances of survival. Iraq, too, had contemplated an intervention into Syria as late as December the 3rd, when a readout of a call between Iraq's Prime Minister and the President of Turkey indicated that Iraq would intervene where it fears that groups within Syria are subject to ethnic cleansing. Since then, Iraqi forces have massed at the Syrian border, and hundreds of fighters affiliated to Iran-backed Iraqi militias, predominantly Shia ones, did stream into Syria to fight on behalf of the Assad regime. But that Iraqi intervention ultimately failed to materialize as of the time of writing. Russia, most of all, is supposed to be the most powerful backer of the Assad regime around the world, and its direct military support for the regime, plus several large bases in the country, was thought to be a major deterrent to rebel action. But after much of Russia's troop presence was reassigned to Ukraine, Syria was left vulnerable. And when the regime's collapse began in force, Russian troops were all but absent. Some special forces elements did get caught up in the fighting, and their warplanes conducted airstrikes, but that was the extent of it. When it came time to defend Damascus, the Syrian army was completely, utterly alone, and it showed. By nightfall, on December the 7th, less than a week after Aleppo had become the first grand domino to fall, Syria's motley crew of rebels had Damascus dead to rights. Again, the Assad regime's forces withdrew from non-essential locations on the outskirts of the city, where rebels entered amidst occasional firefights, but little in the way of meaningful opposition. In other areas, civilian protesters had already managed to drive government soldiers out of their neighborhoods by the time the rebels arrived. Again, they'd taken down statues, destroyed all the regime propaganda they could find, and in some cases worked out agreements with local troops so that they could defect without trouble. In the outskirts of the city, a particularly horrific prison inside Syria, Sidnaya, was liberated after decades, in which was known as the place that the nation's rebels, political dissidents, and other enemies of the state were sent to die in unimaginable conditions. The government closed down the Damascus airport, evacuating everyone inside and cancelling flights even before the airport was captured. And in the late hours of the night, the rebels caught one final breakthrough. A group of high-ranking Assad regime officials had contacted the rebels, informing them that they intended to defect from the regime together, an act that would almost certainly send most of Syria's army into a defection after them. As the night wore on into the small hours of the morning, the Syrian army issued a command to its officers, informing them that the army would disband and that Bashar al-Assad was no longer in command. Syria's Prime Minister, a career Assad bureaucrat named Mohammed Ghazi al-Jalali, publicly expressed his intent to cooperate with the opposition in forming a transitional caretaker government. Entirely unopposed, Syria's rebels were able to enter Damascus from all sides, in what had ultimately been a nearly bloodless final battle. To say that Syria's civil war is over? It's probably an oversimplification, but as the sun rose over Damascus on the morning of December the 8th, it was the first time in nearly 14 years that Syria's people had not been at war with its government. And it was the first time in over 50 years that the sun rose over Assyria, free of the Assad dynasty. On that day, Damascus would be overtaken with feverish celebration, as thousands took to the streets in rallies and impromptu marches. Similar celebrations took hold across the country in each of Syria's major cities and many of its towns and villages, even in Latakia, where members of the Assad family's own Alawite minority are at their most powerful. A statue of Assad was dragged through the streets as Alawites rejoiced in celebration. Newly freed prisoners, dissidents, and rebels ran through the streets, holding up fingers on both hands, in most cases to show how many years they'd been held captive by one of the most notorious police states on earth. Ordinary Syrians gained entry to the Assad family's palaces, some of them taking furniture or goods with them when they eventually left. Assad's former prime minister indicated that he'd been in contact with the leader of HDS to discuss the upcoming political transition and intended to advocate strongly for free and fair elections. Around the world, Syrian embassies were overrun with supporters of the rebel movement, replacing the Syrian flag of the Assad dynasty with the flags of the movement to free the nation. Television across the Arab world broadcast video sent from inside the headquarters of Syria's state television apparatus, in which armed men announced, quote, the liberation of the city of Damascus, the toppling of the dictator Bashar al-Assad, and the liberation of all oppressed prisoners from the regime's jails. But in all of the triumph of liberation, one critical question remained. Where was Bashar al-Assad? Through to the night of the 7th, the Syrian government had insisted that Assad was still at work in Damascus, and flight logs granted no clear indicators on when he may or may not have fled. Even after Damascus was liberated and the Syrian regime crumbled in his absence, it took hours more for Assad's whereabouts to be known. But when the answer finally came, it was entirely unsurprising. As a Kremlin official explained to Russian state media, Assad had been granted political asylum in Russia, the same nation that had seen to it that his regime survived across more than a decade of war. Assad's wife, Asma, and his 3 children had already been in Russia since prior to the start of the HTS offensive, while other members of the Assad family are known to have traveled to the UAE. According to American and Israeli sources interviewed by Axios, Assad had slipped out of Damascus around midnight, just a few hours before the city fell, and stayed at Russia's airbase near Latakia for a few hours before flying out to Moscow. According to some conflicting sources, both Egypt and Jordan encouraged Assad to develop a government in exile, although both nations deny that accusation. As we've said, there is no guarantee that the Syrian civil war will now conclude, but it's worth taking a moment anyhow and appreciating the sheer magnitude of what has just taken place. In all the world, there is only one living leader, the Sultan of Brunei, who has ruled his nation longer than the Assad dynasty ruled Syria, and in all the world, there is only one non-ceremonial political dynasty, the Nguema family of Equatorial Guinea, that rules today after surviving longer than the Assad regime ultimately did. To throw the Assad family out of power, Syria's rebels had to overcome the chokehold of not only an exceptionally brutal police state, but the deep influences of a regional power in Iran and a global superpower in Russia. To pay the costs of the Assad family's ouster, Syria was forced to endure the bloodiest conflict of the entire Arab Spring and absorbed nearly double the death toll of the next costliest civil war at an estimated total of between 450,000 and 600,000 violent deaths since 2011. That's the second deadliest war of the 21st century, behind only the Second Congo War. Over 13 million Syrians are estimated to have either been internally displaced or fled as refugees. Anywhere from 200,000 to over 300,000 civilians are believed to have been killed. Hundreds of thousands more suffered brutal injury or indescribable torture. And after having paid all of that cost, Syria finally brought about the events of December the 8th, 2024. To overthrow the Assad regime is a Herculean triumph in the modern age, regardless of what we may feel about the identities and ideologies of those responsible, and regardless of what comes next. Yet already there are clear signs that Syria's long nightmare may not be over. At the time of writing, it's not yet dawn in Damascus on December the 9th, just barely 24 hours after the Syrian army chose to stand down, and new problems are already erupting. In the far south of the nation, Israel's ground forces have overtly crossed into Syria for the first time since 1973, with the apparent intent of expanding a buffer zone around the disputed Golan Heights. Meanwhile, on the 8th, explosions across Damascus are believed to have been Israeli airstrikes at locations known to be government facilities. Anonymous Israeli officials have explained to the global press that the strikes were meant to destroy assets of the Syrian military, although the nation is officially mum on the issue. One of the locations belonged to a unit that's believed to have associations to Syria's shadowy chemical weapons program. Dozens of other airstrikes were registered across the nation, some of which appeared to target possible chemical weapons. Meanwhile, in northern Syria, it appears that the worst fears of Kurdish Rojava have been realized. In the Kurdish-controlled city of Manbij, on the border with Turkey, fighting erupted on the 8th as Turkish-backed rebels surged into the area with the support of Turkish air power and kamikaze drones. The Kurds, backed by a hot and cold Turkish ally in the United States, reportedly fought back, but much of Manbij ultimately passed into the control of Turkish-backed forces. It is just a taste of the violence that could soon re-emerge if the process of Syrian liberation goes sideways. In the coming days, we'll be releasing another special episode on Syria to focus on the future of this nation at this incredibly delicate moment. We trust that members of our audience who aren't already subscribed know how to rectify that problem, so you can stay tuned. For now, though, all we can do is step back, take a bit of a breath, and feel what it feels like to witness a pivotal and stunning moment in modern history. The Assad regime has fallen, and we certainly hope that whatever comes next for Syria will be a far brighter future for its people.
Agreed. Fuck Assad.
After half a century of dictatorship, the Assad regime of Syria has finally crumbled to the ground. It took nearly 14 years of war, incredible casualties, millions of people displaced, an unspeakable human tragedy. But finally, the father-son dynasty that dominated Syria for so long has been condemned to history. Now, if you'd like to learn about the shock offensive that took Bashar al-Assad and his cronies down, to learn about the battles and tactics that made a rebel victory possible, well, you're in luck because we recently published a video about that. So check it out after this video if you want to. But today, instead of looking back, we're going to turn our attention forward in time. The Assad regime has fallen, yes, and that is a great victory for the nation of Syria. But what happens now? The nation remains divided between powerful armed factions. Its people will have to find a way for rebels and regime collaborators to live peacefully, and its place on the world stage will need to be thoroughly recalibrated or even reimagined from the ground up. With any luck, the battles in Syria might finally be over, but the process of peace has only just begun, and if history around the world is any indication, then Syria's most difficult moments may still lie ahead. Alright, before we dive in today, we're going to issue our usual caveat.
Oh no, I'm gonna die.
Evolving world events. The situation in Syria is still a very fluid thing right now, and everything from boundaries, territorial control, to the identities of people in charge, to the extent of foreign involvement are all liable to change, both before this episode is released and in the time afterward when information will eventually just go out of date. As a result, we'll specify that everything that we discuss in this episode is up to date as of 12:01 a.m., the start of the day, on Wednesday, the 11th of December 2024, local time in Damascus. In the event of any great upheaval after that, you can rest assured that we will release follow-up episodes in due time. Alright, so the immediate aftermath of the rebel takeover of Damascus has generated a wide range of interesting, colourful, and often quite unreliable maps of who controls what. In order to explain the state of affairs in Syria, however, we're going to use one particular map as a primary point of reference, adding in context and additional information as necessary. That map comes via the Institute for the Study of War, namely a figure called Reported Control of Terrain in Syria. Yet, again, just to be clear, this is not the only descriptor of territorial control that we're referencing, it's just a starting point. As for the forces that currently hold land in Syria, the obvious one to start with is the organization Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, better known as HTS. This organization that most directly brought about the fall of Damascus with a cascading offensive that started at the fringes of the province where HTS had been at its strongest, the governorate. From there, HTS had crashed eastward to Aleppo, and then south to the city of Hama, then to the key city of Homs, and finally to the capital of Damascus. Right now, HTS holds direct control over all 5 of those cities, and going by pre-war census figures, that grants HTS control over 4 of the 5 most populous cities in all of Syria. The only other city within the top 5 is called Latakia. It's Syria's premier port city, and while HTS doesn't hold direct control of the city at present, its and its southerly neighbor Tartus are cut off from the rest of Syria by a continuous line of HTS territory. Although HTS fighters and civil administrators haven't yet parked themselves in many of Syria's outlying towns, they hold functional control over much of west-central Syria, including a range of oil and gas fields to the southeast of Homs. Owing to their direct hold on Damascus, HTS and their civilian leadership wing, the Syrian Salvation Government, have laid the groundwork for a transitional administration. The transitional government was given a major gift just hours after the Assad regime fell, when the final Prime Minister of the Syrian Arab Republic, Mohammed Ghazi al-Jalali, agreed to capacity. Rather than just being a naked power play, the offer had the potential to be very important in the early days of reconciliation, when former Syrian army soldiers, regime officials, intelligence officers, civil administrators, and more would have had to live alongside the very same rebels who overthrew them. Not only that, but they've had to live amongst newly liberated ordinary Syrians who'd lived under their yoke for many years, learned their faces, names, habits, and would no doubt seek retribution. HTS and its leaders have issued a broad amnesty to regime officials and soldiers, and on both sides there's a strong focus on avoiding retributive action. Nonetheless, former Prime Minister al-Jalali lasted only 1 day in his caretaker role before transitioning power to the Prime Minister of HTS's Syrian Salvation Government, a man named Mohammed al-Bashir. HTS, and with it the corresponding civilian administration, are an interesting and complex force in modern Syria. In the United States, Russia, the European Union, and elsewhere, they're designated as a terror organization, and they were, at one time, an Al-Qaeda affiliate with strong links to the Islamic State. They've also been accused of widespread repression in the province of Idlib over the last half-decade, including the mass imprisonment of critics and dissidents against their rule. But at the same time, they've also taken pains to distance themselves from their jihadist past and portray themselves as a moderate, trustworthy force. Since taking Damascus, their leadership has called for the protection of all minorities in Syria, explicitly including non-Muslims, and has gone out of its way to make statements discouraging retribution against state officials. Their Syrian Salvation Government has worked hard to clean up unexploded ordnance, restore basic services, and set up a local administration in areas they've taken over, especially Aleppo. And in the past, they've been responding to public outcry, even releasing hundreds of imprisoned dissidents in response to a protest movement earlier in 2024. They are, again, a very complex organization with a very complex history, and it will be their actions, not their rhetoric, that will show their true colors in time. But as for what those true colors will eventually prove to be, We'll just have to watch and find out. Across the country, the other most powerful force in Syria is the Kurdish-led autonomous state of Rojava, backed up by its fighting wing, the Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF. Kurdish Rojava has long held territory north and east of the Euphrates River, in areas where the Kurds have historically exerted informal control within Syria and where Rojava held a mostly quiet front line with the Syrian regime until a few days ago. During the chaos of the rebel offensive in December, Rojava and the SDF claimed chunks of territory on what was formerly the regime side of the Euphrates, as well as a large patch of land in the north-central portion of the country. Broadly, though, the Kurds declined to take the opportunity to attack targets that were within their reach in favor of consolidating their positions, keeping their hold over critical territory, and watching to see what came next. The reason for their hesitation is the next faction to discuss, the so-called Syrian Interim Government, shortened to SNA. The SNA is backed directly by Syria's northern neighbor, the more powerful and more wealthy nation of Turkey, and they hold territory in Syria's northwest corner. They fought alongside HDS during the latter group's attack on Aleppo, and they captured territory of their own, although they largely stayed clear of the fighting once it progressed southward. In addition to the SNA, Turkey holds a large stretch of territory itself along the northern border between its own land and Syria. That territory cuts into Kurdish Rojava, where it's surrounded to the east, south, and west by Kurdish forces. Turkey has a very long, very bloody relationship with the Middle East's Kurdish population, and while it mostly concerns itself with Kurds on its own territory, it's launched large-scale airstrikes on Rojava as recently as the autumn of 2024. Finally, there are a handful of other land-holding factions to touch on before we move into discussions of a peace and reconstruction process. In the south, autonomous and loosely collaborative rebel factions hold most territory in the provinces of Daraa and Suwaida, although they lack the sort of broad, overarching state infrastructure that HTS has in the Syrian Salvation Government, or that the Kurds have in Rojava. To the southeast, US-backed Syrian fighters hold a large patch of mostly empty desert and surged northward to capture the central city of Palmyra. In addition to Turkey, 3 other key nations hold at least some territory in Syria. Russia holds multiple air and naval bases that it still occupies at the time of writing, while about 900 troops maintain a deconfliction zone in the southeast, and Israel has surged troops into a buffer zone northeast of the disputed Golan Heights after the Assad regime's collapse. Finally, the Islamic State holds scattered small villages and hamlets across the open desert, and it's active in large portions of the Syrian countryside, amidst what regional experts have warned is a years-long reconsolidation of their forces. Alright, so we got to the trouble of laying out each of those factions, not just to belabor the point that Syria is currently a very complicated place, but because every single one of those organizations will have to be taken into account in the effort to establish a lasting peace. Each of them is well armed. Most are empowered directly or indirectly by at least one major foreign backer, and many of them have a long and difficult history with each other in a situation where achieving true peace is a lot easier said than it is done. Right now, the effort to establish a path forward is still in its early stages, when interesting ideas are abundant and detailed actionable plans are still scarce, but the early signs coming out of Damascus are, at least, not outwardly concerning. Although HTS installed its own prime minister at the head of the new transitional government, the organization continues to work with the ex-prime minister of the Assad regime and other key officials to establish a peaceful transfer of power. HTS's leader, widely referred to as Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, but now going by his birth name Ahmed al-Sharaa, has emphasized that a return to violent conflict doesn't appear to be in the cards. Quoting an interview with Sky News here, "People are exhausted from war, so the country isn't ready for another one, and it's not going to get into another one." Al-Sharaa has emphasized the removal of Iran-backed militias from Syria, completing a de-Iranization of a nation that was until recently Tehran's closest sovereign ally in all of the Middle East. His transitional government has already announced plans for economic reforms, with the intent of shifting away from the Assad regime's policy of state-controlled economics and toward a free market system that would see Syria reintegrate with the global economy. Ongoing meetings between the new PM and members of the former Assad government are meant to, quote, restart the institutions to be able to serve our people in Syria, and to, quote, facilitate all the necessary works for the next 2 months until we have a constitutional system to be able to serve the Syrian people, end quote. Now, a According to the transition government, the total transition period in Syria is now expected to last about 18 months in total, with hopes of drafting a new constitution at the end of an initial 6-month period of stabilization. But already, concern has cropped up across Syria and the international community around HTS's apparently limited overtures towards either Kurdish Rojava, the Turkish-backed SMA, or any other rebel group or organization. For all its talk of inclusive process, HTS has thus far worked to implement unilateral control over the transition. It hasn't looked at Rojava, the SMA, the Alternative National Coalition government currently headquartered in Turkey, or others. Granted, we should point out, it's still early in the process, and international arbiters who might more easily network with different sides of the Syrian conflict have yet to arrive. But it will take more than just HTS to form a real, stable government across all of Syria. We have yet to see the group take steps to engage with a wide coalition of interests in the country. In the meantime, stability across most of the nation is holding, for now, including in areas that HTS controls directly. Public accounts from Damascus, Aleppo, and elsewhere within Syria broadly express a feeling of safety, security, and hesitant acceptance of HTS as life goes back to normal. One particularly common statement is that although things might get bad under HTS, it's difficult to envision a way that they could get worse than what Syria's experienced recently. If an ISIS caliphate scores 10 of 10 on a scale of bad outcomes, and the Assad regime scores a 9, then HTS scoring an 8 or lower would constitute improvement. Hopefully, of course, Syria's next leaders will do work a bit better than that. Then there's the reconstruction process itself, where although a full and detailed nationwide assessment is yet to be completed, the early figures are daunting. Back in 2020, the cost of reconstruction was thought to be at about $250 billion US, and that figure will likely have gone up with the events of late 2024. The country's economic collapse will have to be factored in, as will Syria's debts to Iran, currently estimated in the tens of billions of dollars. The future of international sanctions against Syria remains to be seen, especially in the event that HTS, a designated terror organization across much of the world, does take unilateral control. Not only that, but with the US skeptical, Iran and Russia scorned, China looking to keep a low profile, and Turkey and Israel jockeying for geopolitical influence, the question of who might foot the bill on reconstruction has yet to be answered. Internationally, though, there are some bright spots, and a few early indicators that global forces may try and engage with the process of rebuilding Syria. The United States, for example, has emphasized that its foreign terrorist organization designation against HTS won't bar it from starting a dialogue, and that the nation's current outgoing administration would consider revoking that status if HTS can meet certain conditions. The UK and the EU tend to follow the US's example on such things, and the UN has indicated that it may consider removing HTS's terror classification as well. UN officials have expressed broad optimism thus far over how the transition has gone, although that optimism is, understandably, really rather cautious. Meanwhile, Iran has opened its own direct communications with HTS and has advocated a nationwide conference of Syria's various opposed parties. Iranian officials speaking to Western press have expressed that Iran's focus is to keep Syria as firmly under Iran's umbrella as possible. Quoting one official here, "The main concern for Iran is whether Assad's successor will push Syria away from Tehran's orbit. That is a scenario Iran is keen to avoid." End quote. As for Russia, Vladimir Putin claims not to have met with Bashar al-Assad, who he's hosting in Moscow, and purportedly doesn't plan to meet with him anytime soon. Russia's engagement with HTS has consisted of a series of terse exchanges around the fate of Russia's...
What was this? I just died instantly.
Although those talks appear to have resolved in Russia's favor, at least for now. Despite pullbacks from many of Russia's smaller outposts, the nation has showed no signs of withdrawal from its major naval base at Tartus or its major air base in Latakia. For Russia, maintaining access to those bases is very important. Quoting a Russian state TV presenter explaining the situation on Telegram, quoting here, "Obviously, if we lose the bases in Syria, we lose Africa. It'll be almost impossible to fly cargo to the CAR or Mali. Well, we'll develop Siberia instead." End quote. While HTS leaders have guaranteed the safety of Russia's bases for now, Russian mill bloggers indicate that the situation remains tense and that those guarantees may not last long. Meanwhile, there's a somewhat happier issue to consider: the mass return of millions of refugees who've been living outside Syria, some of them for upward of the last decade. HTS has issued an open invitation to all Syrians living abroad to finally return home, and some of them may be able to do so quickly. About 3 million Syrians live in Turkey, and the nation had announced plans to resettle those Syrians back in their home nation before Damascus had even fallen, back when the HTS shock offensive had only captured Aleppo. Foreign leaders have echoed those calls, including the leaders of Denmark and Austria on Tuesday the 10th, both seeking to alleviate the pressure of a long-running Syrian refugee presence in those countries. Other leaders around the world, including some in the Syrian diaspora, have emphasized patience in order to see how the situation shakes out. The diaspora community, however, has been the subject of broad press attention around the globe, and for the most part, Syrian refugees have made clear their desire to return home. So, in broad strokes, those are the developments that indicate things might be going right in Syria, and that this tentative, fragile reconstruction effort might ultimately bear fruit. But before we close out today's episode, we've got to take a look at the other side of the equation, at the lingering stress points and cause for concern that Syria must deal with before their hard-won victory over Assad can become a true peace. First and foremost, as the dust settles over Damascus, the world has quickly woken up to the reality that elsewhere across Syria, there's a real risk of continued violence at scale. One such flashpoint comes in and around the city of Manbij in the north, where Kurdish forces have been in control until December the 8th, just hours after the Assad regime crumbled. There, even as most of Syria were celebrating victory, the Turkish-backed SNA were taking advantage of the confusion to attack the Kurds in that area. Despite fierce resistance, the SNA was able to take over most of the region in hours. The fighting reportedly left hundreds dead and ended with a deal between the US and Turkey so that the US-backed Kurds could withdraw without further bloodshed. This retreat followed earlier Kurdish withdrawals from areas where Turkish-backed forces were advancing and led Kurdish fighters to leave behind enclaves of their own people in and around Aleppo. In the days since, Turkish aircraft have carried out their own strikes on Kurdish positions, and HTS military leaders have claimed that they've pushed Kurdish forces entirely out of the eastern city of Deir ez-Zor. They reportedly only minimal resistance in doing so. The mere fact that violence would still be ongoing in Syria after the fall of Assad is trouble enough, but in this case, it speaks to the particular problem faced by the Kurds in this new order. Turkey has long vilified the Kurdish population of both its own nation and Syria, especially the autonomous Rojava. The fact that Syria has now been taken over by HTS, whose relations with Turkey are quite cordial in practice, and that HTS was supported by the same Turkish-backed rebels who have since pushed the Kurds out of Manbij, is widely recognized as a bad sign for Kurdish forces and their people. In a vacuum, of course, the fall of the Assad regime could be an opportunity for the Kurds. They, a major land-holding power within the country, could have a chance to become active participants in a new Syrian state, carving out special provisions or retaining autonomy on the lands they control. Perhaps they could even realize the long-held ambition of all of Kurdistan, sovereignty negotiated as part of a peace agreement that subdivides lands where the very concept of Syria may no longer reflect the reality on the ground. Instead, the opposite appears to be what's coming. A difficult outcome, but certainly one of the less ruinous options, would be for Rojava to be pushed back to territory within the bounds of the Euphrates and forced to accept and resettle displaced Kurds who had been forced from their homes elsewhere. An outcome that could be a few ticks worse is that the Turkish-backed rebels and HTS turn their military attention northward, opening a battlefront against a new enemy, whilst wiping the Kurds out of any settlements coming from Damascus. Worst of all, the possibility that Turkey, confronting only a very weak government in Damascus, might take its chance and launch a large-scale offensive against Rojava directly with potentially catastrophic effect. To be clear, there are less bad alternatives that could be framed as a win for Turkey, accepting Kurdish statehood in Rojava, for example, and then forcibly relocating all of Turkey's own Kurds there as well. It's not an easy or a kind solution, but certainly it's easier than all-out war. But for now, everything from stalemate to war appears to be on the table. Deeply interlinked with the question of territorial control is the question of oil. Syria doesn't produce much in the way of oil compared to most nations that drill for the stuff, mostly due to a crush of international sanctions. But Syria itself does depend on what oil it can harvest, and right now the Kurdish-led SDF control many of Syria's biggest oil fields, backed up by the United States. That oil, as well as natural gas, is likely to be a major source of future division inside Syria, and it's a problem that can quickly go international, with Shell and Total Energies each maintaining a broad presence in Syria. The role of the United States in backing up Kurdish oil holdings is sure to become a problem for everybody from Turkey to Iran to Russia and more. The Russian military also controls oil fields within Syria, so as long as that's the case, two of the world's most important and most starkly opposed nations will be financially entwined with the outcome of Syria's transition process. Then there are the Alawites, members of the same religious sect as Bashar al-Assad, his father Hafez, and many of the leaders within his government. Rather than face widespread retributive attacks, as many Alawites had feared, they've been treated with a far more open mind by HTS and its allies. In Bashar al-Assad's majority Alawite hometown, local elders pledged their support to HTS, a move that many other Alawite communities have since copied. Unfortunately, both sides know all too well that such a facade would be easy enough to maintain for a few days if it was indeed disingenuous. But at least for now, HTS does appear to be genuine in its overtures to the community. That is a direct rebuttal to the party line the Assad regime fed the Alawites for decades, promising that if Assad ever fell, the minority community would be massacred. It's also a way to leave an open door for former regime officials to come into the fold, trusting that between assurances to their Alawite community and broader commitments to amnesty, they may not have anything to fear. While HTS has been clear that they, quote, will not hesitate to hold accountable the criminals, murderers, security and army officers involved in torturing the Syrian people, the signals they've sent to the Alawite community and other ex-regime personnel seem to have reassured people that they'll just be going after high-ranking or particularly monstrous individuals. A harder problem to deal with is the Islamic State, whose fighters still run free across Syria's open wastes and are getting stronger by the day. Since the fall of the Assad regime, US warplanes have carried out airstrikes against Islamic State targets, but the limited actions by the US and the Syrian commandos and SDF forces they partner with aren't nearly enough to get the job done by themselves. The Islamic State loves a power vacuum, and it's got a massive one to exploit across Syria, especially in the empty heartlands where no group can really assert control. Their goals now appear less focused on territorial consolidation than they used to be, but even still, such massive swaths of land offer the potential for widespread asymmetric attacks, the planting of roadside bombs, the gathering and training of large bands of fighters, and the takeover of small towns and villages that could supply a power base. Even worse, any large-scale moves against the Kurds could end up swelling the ranks of the Islamic State. Thousands of Islamic State fighters are currently held in Kurdish prisons, but the Kurds have made no secret of the fact that if they're forced to choose between defending their people and protecting the prisons, they'll choose their own people. Vacate the prisons, and mass jailbreaks could very quickly follow, refilling the ranks of an organization that's smarter and more cunning than it was even at the height of its power. And speaking of problems that are hard to solve, we turn to Israel. In the hours following the overthrow of Assad, IDF troops surged into Syria past the disputed territory of the Golan Heights in order to carve out a buffer zone between themselves and Syria's armed factions. In the initial push, Israel took over a chunk of territory several kilometers deep, including Mount Hermon, a strategically vital point of high ground that offers a vantage point over much of the border zone. There they can maintain a presence just 40 kilometers away from Damascus, although new reports suggest that the IDF has pushed even further, potentially as close as 25 kilometers from the city. The IDF denies these claims. In the area it's taken over, Israel explains its moves as an attempt to create a, quote, sterile defensive zone. Defense Minister Israel Katz described it as a demilitarized zone. Meanwhile, Jerusalem has attempted to place heavy rhetorical pressure on the new
Gold Curse Coconut. I think those are supposed to be really good.
Threatening retribution if Iran is allowed to re-establish its presence there. Quoting Netanyahu here, if this regime allows Iran to re-establish itself in Syria or permits the transfer of Iranian weapons or any other weapons to Hezbollah, or if it attacks us, we will respond forcefully and we will exact a heavy price. End quote. Attacking from the sky, Israel claims to have hit Syria with upward of 480 airstrikes within just a 48-hour stretch since the fall of the Assad regime. The Israel Defense Forces, or IDF, claim to have, quote, struck most of the strategic weapons stockpiles in Syria, preventing them from falling into the hands of terrorist elements. Among the hardware that Israel claims to have destroyed are anti-air batteries, warplanes and combat helicopters, about 15 naval vessels, and factories and infrastructure for weapons production, collectively constituting 80% of the Syrian army's military capabilities prior to the fall of Assad. Israel is also believed to have struck a range of sites tied to the Assad government's long-running chemical weapons program. And finally, there's the question of humanitarian work. In an environment where most of the groups that aid organizations could liaise with are designated by somebody or another as a terrorist organization. For their part, HTS has reportedly done a good job opening up bread lines, redistributing fuel and water, and supplying other basic needs in the areas they control. But those initiatives can only last so long on limited resources, and they'll take away from the civil manpower needed to stabilize and push for a peace in the area. Now that the fighting has ended, it'll be vital to surge international aid to much of the country where food, fuel, and medicine shortages are expected to be widespread. For their part, HTS has recognized the ways in which their terrorist designation could stand in the way of the proper delivery of aid, and the group is committed to running captured territory through third-party administrators and an overarching transitional government that can do business much easier. With luck, that decision will coincide with foreign governments lifting restrictions on the flow of aid into Syria and a potential jumpstart to the reconstruction effort. Now, we've said it before, and we'll say it again. This is an extremely fragile moment for Syria and for every person, organization, and nation with a stake in Syria's future. Very little about these coming months will be easy, but failure to reach a lasting peace at this juncture can and will have catastrophic consequences. As Syria's future evolves, we'll be here to talk about it. And until then, let's hold out hope that this utterly shattered nation may finally start to heal. Thanks for watching.
Syria, 2024.
Oops.
It is important to note here that the family says they do not have any facts or information to confirm.
Thank
that
you,
any of that is
Warfronts.
true. Instead, saying,
Thank you, Warfronts, for the excellent content from my stream. I'd like to sub to your channel.
$2024.
I've opened so many chests and I'm not getting credit. It's fucking annoying. I'm in the wrong monument or something. Now I've got so much that I just want to fucking leave. But there's nobody out here, so it doesn't matter. I have 125 doubloons, which is pretty good for, like, theoretical loot. Wait, I guess I am getting credit for these. Oh, look, I got it. Now all I have to do is extract. The fastest way to extract is north. Which is that way. I always kind of questioned their decision to put this rain sound on the staff, because it sounds like you're standing underneath a fucking plate, a metal plate, and rain's falling on it, but it's just a staff on your back. Ooh, what's that? treasure wave. Oh. 10 doubloons. That's all that was. That wasn't worth 10 doubloons. No, keep moving. There it is. Nice. 680, not bad. Okay, now I can freely extract. Because I extracted. Right, yeah, I don't have to get these missions home, do I, or whatever.
saying in a statement before Hannah was found that this theory was one of many different leads they were investigating and that any information they had was turned over to law enforcement. With them adding, we kindly ask everyone to avoid jumping to conclusions or spreading unverified claims. And then, Hot Ones, the YouTube staple interview show, just got sold, with BuzzFeed announcing today that they sold First We Feast, which is the studio behind the show that makes a bunch of other content. And the sale reportedly coming in with a price tag of $82.5 million. A price tag that was notably paid by a group of investors, including an affiliate of Soros Fund Management, First We Feast founder Chris Schonberger, the host of Hot Ones, Sean Evans, and Rhett and Link's media company, Mythical Entertainment. Though I will say that's not everyone who invested in. There are more names that will reportedly be dropped at a later date. But what we do know now is that First We Feast is going to be operating as an independent multi-platform media company. With Schonberger, who's the new CEO, saying, with new investment, we're poised to expand into exciting new areas, including new platforms, live events, and talent acquisition, cementing First We Feast as the ultimate destination for pop culture-obsessed audiences. And this is Sean Evans, who will continue hosting the show, will also reportedly be the new chief creative officer. And as far as why the company was sold, I mean, there's probably a number of reasons, but notably, this deal pulls BuzzFeed out of some hot water. It's going to allow it to pay down tens of millions of dollars in debt that was coming due this month, with them now reportedly planning on paying $88.8 million of their $124 million debt, partially with the proceeds of this sale, which reportedly will put them in a much better position than they've been in, with more cash on the books than debt, which also touches on what a BuzzFeed in the future may look like, as they have reportedly told investors they're pulling away from original content, and instead, they're focusing more on using AI to make and deliver content to their users, with BuzzFeed's founder and CEO specifically saying, in the coming years, we will continue to invest in our most scalable and tech-enabled services, launching new AI-powered interactive experiences and delivering for our loyal audience and business partners. And while I don't know about all that, I will say I am excited to see what happens with Hot Ones and First We Feast, especially with Sean Evans having an elevated role. That is, of course, unless he ever gets involved in a scandal, in which case I don't know that guy and I've never supported him. There's no friends of the show here. I've been disappointed by too many people over the past 2 decades. But then, taking a quick break from the news, have you ever struggled to tune out city noise or a snoring partner or your own racing thoughts at bedtime? Well, I do, possibly more than most, but thanks to today's sponsor, Oslo Sleep Buds, they have the ultimate sleep hack to a better night's sleep. Because unlike regular earbuds that can be uncomfortable and impractical for sleeping, Oslo Sleep Buds are designed specifically with your comfort in mind, perfect even for the side sleepers out there like me. And their noise masking technology, it's a game changer. Instead of just tracking how poorly you slept like other wearables, Oslo Sleep Buds actively help you fall asleep faster and, more importantly, stay asleep longer. And you can stream whatever helps you relax, soothing sounds, audiobooks, or even your favorite podcasts. And then, thanks to built-in biometric sensors, the Sleep Buds know when you've drifted off, automatically switching to calming sleep sounds. So with a 10-hour battery life, you're covered all night. Plus, the in-ear personal alarm is a lifesaver, waking you gently without disturbing anyone else. Plainly put, if you are serious about transforming your sleep, Oslo Sleep Buds are the way to go. Prioritize your well-being with better rest. You'll thank yourself for it. Just scan the QR code or click the link in my description and use code PHILD for $10 off your purchase. Sweet dreams start here. But then, the FBI right now is investigating if there is an organized crime group that's targeting some of the biggest professional athletes in America, with reports saying that since September, local police departments have reported a string of burglaries at the homes of NBA and NFL players in Kansas, Missouri, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Ohio. And this is something
organized
that's ongoing.
NFL
Just this
ball
week, there was a
NFL
break-in
ball
and robbery
player.
at the Ohio home of Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow.
Not a bad
Reportedly
hustle.
happening while he was playing Monday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys in Texas. And he is in no way alone, right? I mean, back in October, the homes of Kansas City Chiefs players Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce were robbed just one day apart. Those weren't the only back-to-back burglaries. In September, 2 players on the Minnesota Timberwolves were also hit a day apart, with burglars stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of property from one and $100,000 worth from the other. But I will say, some of the players have lost even more financially. Last month, for example, a group of at least 3 men broke into the home of Milwaukee Bucks forward Bobby Portis while he was playing a game, and they stole more than $1 million worth of items from his bedroom. And with all this, as far as the identity of the people or the groups behind these break-ins, you had the NBA providing some information in a memo last month that was obtained by the New York Times. And there, we saw the league saying that the FBI had, quote, connected many of the home burglaries to transnational South American theft groups, also known as SATGs. The memo going on to say that the groups tend to go after cash and items that can be resold on the black market, such as jewelry, watches, and luxury bags. Saying that in most cases, it appeared that the burglaries happened when the athletes' homes were not occupied, mostly on game days and during times when alarm systems weren't activated. And specifically noting that the burglars mostly entered through back windows or sliding doors. And as far as how they've been able to target these famous athletes, according to the memo, right, it's not
Back
just,
windows
we're playing a
or
game.
sliding
The FBI saying these
doors.
SATGs are well-organized, sophisticated rings that incorporate advanced techniques and technologies, including pre-surveillance, drones, and signal jamming devices. But with that, also adding they may be gathering intel from social media and public records. With, for example, ABC News also separately reporting that some of these groups, they've conducted extensive surveillance on targets, including attempted home deliveries and posing as ground maintenance or joggers in the neighborhood, which is why with this, both the NFL and NBA have reportedly put out security alerts to their teams, warning them to stay vigilant and make sure that their security systems are turned on. We've also seen players being warned to avoid updating social media daily, posting check-ins, and sharing content of expensive items on their accounts. Though some, like Miami quarterback Tua, he went a different route. He just said, y'all, I have security and they have guns. Which honestly, that is probably going to be the most effective way to protect your shit. It's unfortunate, but it is the reality. And then, outgoing President Biden just granted clemency to nearly 1,500 Americans, which is the most any president has ever done in a single day. And he broke the record by a lot. It's like they handed him a list and they were like, who do you think? And he was like, yes. Right, because just for comparison's sake, the previous record was held by Obama, who granted 330 people clemency at the end of his last term in 2017. And this is notably in the fact sheet for Biden's move. The White House said that of the 1,500 people, most are people who have been put on home confinement during the pandemic and, quote, have successfully reintegrated into their families and communities. And possibly explaining this move is that some of the Republicans who are going to be taking control of Congress next month have pushed forward legislation that would force some of those folks to return to prison. Also, delving into the specifics and the details, right, Biden is not pardoning most of these people. He's just commuting their sentences, which is a different thing. Right? Well, a pardon totally erases a conviction. A commutation doesn't change the guilty verdict or exonerate the crime. It just reduces some or all of the punishment. And while the commutations do make up the vast majority of the clemency that we're seeing here, Biden did also grant pardons to 39 people who were convicted of nonviolent crimes. With their fact sheet here noting that the people who were granted clemency today include nonviolent offenders, quote, who were sentenced under outdated laws, policies, and practices that left them with longer sentences than if the individuals were sentenced today. Also with this, I'll say, in addition to breaking the record for single-day clemency, this move represents a big
It's weird. I never hear about the president doing anything. We heard about Obamacare, and some Build Back Better, but most of the time when I hear them talk about the president, I hear about them pardoning the criminals that they know. And I'm like, oh, the president's finally doing something. And then I realize that it's them pardoning their criminal friends. Am I not supposed to lose faith when I hear stuff like this? I'm like, oh, the president's doing something, and it's, pardoning his criminal friends or whatever. And it's weird. It's like, it's okay that they get to do that, but it seems weird that that's what one of their privileges is you get a bail out, or whatever, get out of jail free card for you and your friends or whatever. It seems sort of weird. It's like that was programmed into this, was it? It must have been. Oof. Cool. Can I teleport? I guess I can, huh? Oh, no, I guess I can't without losing credit. That's alright. I just won't lose this credit if I die.
Shift for Biden. And that because until now, he had only issued just 26 pardons and commuted sentences for around 140 people. With those notably including things like military vets being convicted of having gay sex, which used to be a crime under military law, and Biden also becoming the first president to pardon people with federal marijuana convictions. And very significantly here, it also appears that Biden is not done, with the fact sheet explicitly saying that he would be reviewing and granting more clemency requests in the weeks to come. So it's going to be very interesting to see what he actually does there, because, I mean, there's been growing pressure for him to commute the sentences of people on federal death row. Right? I mean, federal executions have been paused under Biden, who notably also failed to fulfill his campaign promise of ending the death penalty. But then also beyond that, it's been reported that Biden's team is considering the possibility of granting preemptive clemency for people who could be targeted by Trump's repeated vow to punish his perceived political enemies. With that, reportedly including Dr. Fauci, Senator-elect Adam Schiff, who led the first impeachment effort against Donald Trump, and former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, who has arguably become the #1 GOP critic of Trump. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens from now till January 20th. But then we've got to talk about this $895 billion defense bill that just got passed by the House, except this story isn't actually about defense or national security or even military spending. Instead, it's about how this defense bill has actually become another battleground in the fight over transgender issues. And also with that, we're going to go beyond the United States and take a look at recent news from the United Kingdom to see how this debate compares on both sides of the pond. But let's start with the bill, because the bill does have stuff that you would normally expect to be in a piece of defense policy legislation. Like, for example, there's considerable pay raises for enlisted and other service members. There's $3 billion for improving military housing. There's money for an initiative meant to bolster Taiwan's defense capabilities. And there's also controversial measures like increased military assistance at the U.S.-Mexico border and the expansion of aid to Israel. But what ended up almost killing this bill was a provision that denied coverage for transgender health care for the children of service members. Specifically, this provision would keep the military's health care plan from covering, quote, medical interventions for the treatment of gender dysphoria that could result in sterilization for children under 18. With that, a key thing is that some argue that Republicans have portrayed almost all gender-affirming care, which could but doesn't necessarily include hormone therapy, as possibly leading to sterilization, which notably is something that medical professionals say actually doesn't happen in most cases. So with that, what we've seen are things like in a tweet, Mike Johnson himself describing the provision as a ban on transgender treatment in general. And this is Democrats say that the language in the bill might be used to deny minors treatment to deal with the anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation that many transgender children experience. With Adam Smith of Washington, for example, saying that the provision, quote, paints an otherwise excellent piece of legislation, and adding, blanketly denying health care to people who need it just because of a biased notion against transgender people is wrong. This inclusion of this harmful provision
Blanketly is not a fucking word, you idiot.
puts the lives of children at risk and may force thousands of
I'm gonna put a comment on this fucking video, blanketly.
service members to make the choice of continuing their military service or leaving to ensure their child can get the health care they need. With the big thing there also being Smith expressing openness to debate, saying there is a reasonable question about what care minors should receive in this area. Then also with that, claiming the Republican leadership actually rejected Democrats' offer to study this issue and look at the expertise of medical professionals, claiming instead they insisted on an outright ban because of their, quote, ignorant, bigoted views about transgender people. Though also with that, a big thing is that Republicans originally pressed for a far more expansive ban, seeking to deny gender-affirming treatment for anyone covered under the military's insurance plan. Though seemingly, Democrats ended up talking them out of provisions limiting access to abortion services and restricting the Pentagon's DEI programs. And this, as Republicans insisted on dropping a provision to expand access to IVF in the military. Currently, it's only available to service members if their infertility issues were caused by illnesses or injuries sustained while on active duty. Some lawmakers wanted coverage for IVF treatments regardless of why they were needed. And also with this, part of the reason I'll say we're talking about it is even what's happening here, this is a big change from years past, where Republicans and Democrats have historically tried to actually keep contentious social issues out of the defense bill altogether. But with all that said, right, this specific bill, it ended up passing the House easily with 81 Democrats and 200 Republicans voting in favor. Now, the Senate expected to take it up and pass the measure in the coming days. Then also, as this is happening, we are seeing battles take place at the state level. We're seeing things like just this week, Montana Supreme Court temporarily blocking a state ban on gender-affirming medical care for transgender minors. With that, Montana is now just one of roughly 24 states that have introduced similar bans, and this is as the Supreme Court is now weighing the constitutionality of the one in Tennessee. While a decision there is not expected for several months, the court's conservative majority reportedly seems inclined to uphold the ban. There's also seeing Republican politicians citing the restriction on gender-affirming care in Europe, including the United Kingdom, to justify laws against youth gender medicine. But this is people saying European policies are notably different from the outright bans that are passed in U.S. states, some of which end up threatening doctors with prison time or investigate parents for child abuse. Or with a number of people noting that the few European countries with restrictions still allow gender treatments for certain adolescents, and they're requiring new clinical trials to study and better understand their effects. Specifically, we're seeing a focus on hot-button issues like hormonal therapies and puberty blockers. But the key thing being that gender-affirming care encompasses a range of social, psychological, behavioral, and medical interventions such as counseling, which ends up bringing us to the big news today from the UK, because we're now seeing the country indefinitely banning new prescriptions of puberty blockers to treat minors for gender dysphoria. And this actually goes back to last spring when the National Health Service, or NHS, stopped prescribing puberty blockers as routine treatment to children and young people with gender dysphoria back in March. That decision also making it the 5th European country to limit the medications because of a lack of evidence of their benefits and concern about long-term harms. But around the same time, an independent NHS commission study found that the medical evidence around transition-related care for minors was remarkably weak and that more research was needed. With that then leading to May, when the then conservative government temporarily banned the private prescription of puberty blockers as well, a decision that was also upheld by the country's high court over the summer. So now what we're seeing is this new Labour Party government basically extending the ban until more evidence is available. And with that, you had Health and Social Care Secretary Wes Streeting saying, children's health care must always be evidence-led. The Independent Expert Commission on Human Medicines found that the current prescribing and care pathway for gender dysphoria and incongruence presents an unacceptable safety risk for children and young people. With Streeting also saying decisions were being taken based on the evidence and advice of clinicians, not politics or political pressure, and adding, I know it won't feel like it based on the decisions I'm taking today, but I really do care about this, and so does this government. I am determined to improve the quality of care and access to healthcare for all trans people. With him then finally speaking from his experience as a gay man, saying, I can't pretend to know what that's like, but I do know what it's like to feel you have to bury a secret about yourself, to be afraid of who you are, to be bullied for it, and then to experience the liberating experience of coming out. And so with all
Yeah, never really felt liberated about being hurt by the cold and, being ostracized and chased all my life for doing drugs. I never really felt liberated about that and still don't. And the drug war didn't end, and you guys, all your stuff ends. I think even kind of the gay war ended, but not the drug war. Drug war still keeps going. All of my friends have been harmed. All of my heroes are dead. And I think, I think even slavery ended faster than the suppression that I felt. And it's annoying. It's okay. But I look at everybody else in the world get what they want. It's kind of annoying. I'll just be honest and say it. I would love to spend the rest of my life in a methed out, blacked out haze, alcohol, meth, and heroin for the rest of my life. And I would like to deal with my parents passing when and if it ever, when and if it happens, I would just like to descend into a drugged out haze for the rest of my life. And I feel like everybody else, like we saw gay marriage, we saw trans rights, we saw like IVF, we saw a black president. I don't think we'll ever see a female president because the rich white people are just gone fucking shithouse crazy. They've gone ape mode. But I mean, I think we're gonna see the end of most of the suppression, except for the serfdom and the drugs. Like the two things that affected my life the worst, the digital currency problem, and 30 years of surf, and my inability to do the drugs that I wish to do to medicate my my personality, and I'm like, maybe in 20 years, we don't know. Maybe in 20 years it'll be over. I'll be 60 and it won't matter by then. 65 something. And it won't matter for me, I think, by then. So it's good to know that all the things that I really wanted, all the positive social changes that I wanted in my life, that I fought for and screamed for all of my fucking life, just weren't the ones that they were the ones that we didn't see in the end. The ones that it's just more barriers and more shit in the fucking way. I'm not unhappy or sad about any of this. I'm saying I get frustrated I get angry. I'm like, why did it need to be this way? Everybody else got theirs. The LGBTQ community got their pride and were able to be just accepted. The I think even the BLM movement had some say in what happened with the brutalism in this country. I think the hippies got their flower power revolution. I think the corpos got their money. And wars and all this, and everybody got everything that they wanted. And all I ever wanted was the world to let me live my own life. That's all. All I ever wanted was to live. That was it. All I ever wanted was the world to let me live my own life. It's not even like I want something, really big. I just wish to be left alone on those things. And all I ever wanted was the world to let me live my own life. That's all. And you could boil it down to that single sentence. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we'll see all of it. I think we could even see the end of war or leaving this planet and taking to the stars in the next 50 or 60 years. I think we could see a lot of really, really crazy, awesome things happening. But the one thing I'm fairly sure of is the stuff that fucking destroyed my life. The two things, the suppression and the drug war and being hurt by the cold. They're the two things that aren't going to fix. Everybody else is going to get there. So I think even the inflation will probably end eventually. I think there could, it's just crazy. But I don't think my problems are going away. I think everybody else's. Sometimes I really struggle with trying not to feel like I'm the unique catalyst here, and that my uphill barriers were the most uphill or whatever, because there's people facing way worse stuff. But I'm talking about I don't know. I don't see an end in sight for the problems that really plagued me. I don't really see it. I see endless corpos destroying the fucking world. There's not really been an end to that. The hegemony. I see endless suppression and the fascists around me. The drug war and the prison industrial complex. I see the suppression of everything that we need to live. In terms of inflation, I'm sorry, the inflation of everything we need to live. I didn't mean suppression, but it's the same thing. And honestly, I just want I just want the prison industrial complex to end and the drug war to end, so I could just medicate myself into oblivion after everything that I valued and everything that I hoped for and everything that I loved and every last place that I've ever lived and everything I know and loved burned. You know, I just want to self-medicate at the end of it. And no, I think it's a cold, hard fucking. It's a long. I mean, it's not a long, hard road for me, but I think it's a long, hard road for everybody. And then for them, they sat and they wanted something for like 50 years. I think they get it. I don't think I'm gonna get what I want. I think the prison industrial complex thing is gonna keep going, and I think the drug war is gonna keep going. I don't really want to pass with those things still existing in my country, killing my fucking people. I don't want to pass away. I don't want my parents to pass away of old age, knowing that nothing ever really changed, that we never did really ever catch the JFK killer, that we didn't really ever, like, you know, we didn't really ever end that shitty drug war, or the racism, or the sexism, or the equal gender pay stuff, or the fucking equality. It just sucks. Like I needed some victory in this lifetime, some victory. But thinking back now, something like 30 fucking years, it was mostly suppression. I really hate the fucking system and the fucking assholes who anybody who rolls with them. And so now I kind of need you to let me, like, I want the world to let me live my own life. You know, that's Long Beach Dub All-Stars that I'm quoting, but it's a good lyric. All I ever wanted was to live. All I ever wanted was to give. All I ever wanted was the world to let me live my own life. All I ever wanted was to give. All I ever wanted was to live. Stars are shining down from the stars tonight. Sun is fully eclipsed, and now I see the light. Everyone keeps coming crashing down from all sides, and I see some things are never gonna change my life. If you ask me for the answers, you'll get one reply. All I ever wanted was the world to let me live my own life. All I ever wanted was to give. All I ever wanted was to live. All I ever wanted was the world to let me live my own life. You know, that's Sublime with the new singer, the Long Beach Dub All-Stars. That's Marshall Fielding, I believe. And, you know, that's Sublime I'm singing right now. And, like, I mean, it was the same bullshit back then. Same thing, same stuff that Bradley was complaining back then. It's still a problem now. It's fucking stupid. And, like, I don't know, like, all I ever wanted was the world to let me live my own life. And I think they're all going to get everything that they want. I think the corpos are going to get their fucking corpo suppression of the entire world and the syndication of the entire corpo complex, like the end of, you know, like Vicious you know, I'm gonna speak about this, Flower. I'm gonna speak about this eloquently, right? Like, I think the corpos are going to get what they want in the end, and they're going to syndicate up the fucking world. So we have, like, basically, you know, Cowboy Bebop with Vicious and the syndicates. And I think all the gangs of the world, I think that's, and there'll be no victory there, really, like, really there. I think the corpos are going to get what they want. I think the LGQBT scene got their recognition finally and stopped being ostracized, and I'm really so jealous of them, because I've faced serfdom and jail for drugs all of my goddamn life, and all of my friends have been thrown in jail for drugs, and everybody I know is hurt by the cold or dead to junk. All my heroes are fucking dead, and it must be nice to see some surcease. Like, even if it did come in a court trial, like the Ahmaud Arbery trial and stuff, even if it took court trials and stuff, at least my people, they finally saw, like, some sort of cease to the fucking suffering and torture and the suffering and the torture of the fucking racism and the rampant racism in this fucking country. But I'm saying they got their recognition in the end, though. I think, like, I'm saying that, like, I say that the women got their recognition. I think everybody got their recognition, and now I kind of want my turn. I think if everybody else is going to have their quality of life improved and their way of life respected, I kind of want the drug war to fucking end, and I need them to stop inflation starving the top 10 things that we need to survive, such as education and food and shelter and transportation and healthcare and all this other stuff. I need you to stop fucking war profiteering on the things we need to survive. And if you give me those two things, I will die a happy man, and I will lead a hippie love revolution for you, or whatever it is you need. I don't care. But understand, I'll start a new Walden or something, you know, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. Like, but understand, like, I think everybody else kind of got some recognition. I don't think, you know, I don't think so. I think part of the problem with the digital serfdom for 35, 40 years is that the other side of it is that all the 10 things that I need to survive, and I don't need a lot to survive. I live off of like, you know, $7,000 a year, something like that. I don't need a lot to survive. But you charge so much that the $7,000 won't pay for it all. It's insane. It's like, so I need surcease from the suffering. I need this surcease from the prison industrial complex. I don't want to be thrown in jail for drugs anymore. I don't want to be judged for it. I don't want to feel like an alien in my own fucking family's house because I did drugs one time. Your judgment and your bullshit. I don't want to feel like an alien in my own family's fucking house. When I walk in there, I wonder if I'm going to face... It's weird. It's like when I walk in my own family's house, I wonder if I'm going to face accusations of being a thief or something like that. And it's irrational. I've never faced anything like that. But I still feel like that all the time. Like there was so much judgment passed all the fucking time. Like the fact that I whatever you think it is, you call it slipping up. I call it making adult choices and getting high and having fun. But like whatever you call it, slipping up and fucking up or whatever, probably. But I call it being an adult and having fun or whatever in the ways that I find fun. And so like, you know, and you could say I lost my way. But honestly, I think it's you guys that lost your way. I think your judgment and trying to play God and fucking us over with your prison industrial complex and throwing us all in jail for nonviolent drugs and stuff. I think you're the ones who lost your way. I think I sit here pretty morally, I would say, superior to you. And I'm the shitty drug addict kingpin. But I think I sit morally superior to the rest of the society. Your judgment and your bullshit has fucking killed me. And I think about it all the time. I'm like, oh my God, Assad fell before we saw the end of digital serfdom or the drug war. We saw the BLM movement. We saw a black president. We saw females run for president before we saw the end of the digital serfdom and the end of the drug war and all the stuff that killed everybody that I know and love. We saw, you know, we're going to see the end of the Russia-Ukraine thing and maybe the end of Israel-Palestine before we see the end of the prison industrial complex and the digital fucking serfdom and the starvation inflation of everything that we need to survive. It's fucking weird. And so like I think like I envy gay people. I'm like, it must be nice to get some recognition and feel like you're finally accepted. I envy the family of people who were owned by slaves because at least their nightmare ended. I envy the dead. You know, like, because I think the dead have more hope than I do. I think the dead are likely to see the reincarnation of Jesus fucking Christ or something like that before we see the end of the fucking suppression, the end of the corpos choking the top things that we need to survive with their inflation, fucking war profit, and like and the drug war, the fucking ravages of the fucking drug war and all of the forced black markets that are that commence the minute you tell fucking humans that they can't do something with their fucking bodies. And even that, I don't think that suppression's gonna end either. Honestly, I'm not really even sure that the trans people are totally free. I'm not really sure the gay people are totally free. I'm not totally sure that the people of other ethnicity are totally safe. It's fucking crazy. I still don't really feel that we maybe made that much progress. I think it's this false sense of achievement when we call something woke. I think the anti-woke thing is actually this crazy thing, because there's this assumption that some kind of DEI fucking woke thing actually won. But all I see is rampant fucking racism, rampant fucking fascism, fascism, rampant fucking suppression, rampant fucking crazy inflation, charging everything to this cost that rivals World War II or something like that. I don't see any of the shit that you see. I don't see it, you know? And it fucking sucks to have to wax intellectual about this stuff, but it's like, I will speak freely about what it's like to live with humanity right now. It is utter fucking horseshit, especially if you're like a gamer who likes drugs. Like, honestly, I end up envying trans people and gay people, their revolutions finally getting some traction and going somewhere fucking beautiful. I don't think anything's ever going to happen with any of the things that I want. I don't think anything beautiful is ever going to happen with any of the things that I want, because they consider all the things that I want, which is decency and letting me live my own life. All I ever wanted was the world to let me live my own life. I wanted some decency and letting the world letting me live my own life. I think that is far fucking beyond current humanity. I don't think they're fucking capable of it. And so I get very, very fucking angry. We can act like it's cool that we all live on the same planet. And I know I don't want to go to war with you or kill anybody. I'm not crazy. I'm not a violent man. I'm peaceful, Gandhi pacifist. I don't want any of your war or your problems or your strife or anything to make it better or worse or any of that other stuff. I'm just pointing out how long this suffering has lasted. It started when I was like 13 years old. I'm mid-40s. And see, I mean, like, honestly, I think slavery ended faster. Your suppression and your fucking bullshit that has destroyed my people, thrown everybody I known in fucking jail, and destroyed everything and everybody that I know. And that black market that you foster, and all the gangs that make their fucking living off of your fucking drug war, and all the bullshit that you cause with your, and by you, I mean like the people in power. It's everybody. It's not just the fucking government. I'm talking about all of the leading fucking people in this world. They're the scam that they have built and called like a prosperous life or whatever is just insane. And like your suppression of everything and everyone and every idea that I know and everything that we do is insane. It reminds me of the suppression room in fucking BWL, except it's the entire fucking world. There's like the entire world is in fucking stasis now, and nobody can move forward because it's like everybody I know is suppressed for some reason. The gay people face homophobia. The black people face racism. I face digital serfdom and the drug war. I face the prison industrial complex and poverty. We face the education system crumbling, which means a lot of stupid people, which means the government and the fucking and the country crumbling. We face competition that are actually dead-faced serious, and we're fucking not. We're into suppressing people and fucking throwing our own people in fucking jail and building 55,000 prisons for a 50-state colony. And we're on some hate ourselves and lock ourselves up bullshit. Like, we don't need Nazis or Chinese or Russians or Israel-Palestine people that we're terrified of and all the shit that the media fucking tells us to be terrified of all the time. We're these fucking fucked up people who are doing penance in public and whipping ourselves on our own fucking backs with cat of nine tails for no good goddamn reason at all, with this fucking prison industrial complex, the motherfucking drug war, the suppression of everything you know and love, the suppression of the gay people and the trans people, the suppression of the women, the suppression of the fat people, the suppression of the fucking military, the suppression of like all of this stuff. It's insane. It's just weird. It's just like control. Never totally freedom. You know, it's just odd. And so I'm not talking about solutions here. I'm very aware of this. I'm talking about the existential crisis of understanding that there is no hope with this current fucking civilization. There is no hope. Like, honestly, I hate being that one that says it, because I don't want to throw my fucking hands up. I don't believe in so fucking what. I believe in everything fucking matters, you know? I believe in everything fucking matters, and so I think it matters that I see hope in literally slavery ending before my digital serfdom and prison industrial complex persecution. It sucks. Slavery ended faster. It's fucking fucked up. Did you ever watch that movie Lincoln? And you think about all the shit they did to get the Emancipation Proclamation and the amendment passed and all this stuff, and then you realize, like, wow, they're all dancing and crying as the bells go off outside the Capitol district and in the fucking Capitol building and all this stuff, and they're all voting and they're all like, you know, entwined. I love the end of Lincoln. It was such a fucking good movie, even though it's like a bunch of horse hockey most of it, but it was just, you know, but it was still a really fucking well done movie. And like, I loved the end of it when the freedom bells ring and they're like, we managed to end slavery and all that, and then I cry like a little fucking girl. I cry like a little fucking girl as Tommy Lee Jones goes to bed as he's like 85 or something with his black wife. I fucking love the end of that fucking movie. It's so wonderful. And Tommy Lee Jones goes to bed with his black wife and he hands her the first copy of the Emancipation Proclamation and he's like, here's our wedding present. It's so fucking beautiful. And she's like, I love you. And then they go to bed in the same bed finally together. And I thought that was such a beautiful touch. It's all horsesucky, almost all of it, but it's, you know, it's good horsesucky that's meant to establish, like, you know, fair for freedom and fairness, and, you know, and I think, oh my God, the slaves got free before I did. I literally do. I think this all the time. I'm like, Jesus Christ, the digital serfdom of online currency being unable to be sold without terms of service violation or being able to pay taxes on it or get insurance on, you know, the money that you make or it being considered a real job that you can pay taxes for, or any of the suppression that they did to me since I was like fucking 14 years old and I'm mid 40s now. It's been 32 years, something like that. I look at my lifelong, whatever you want to call it, my joke of a fucking career of playing video games professionally for a fucking living. You want to know why I'm here on stream complaining like a bitter ass old man? You want to know why? It's because I know that my stream will end and I'll die of old age before the fucking prison industrial complex will end and the fucking drug war ends and I'm able to do drugs freely in my own fucking home and get the surcease from the pain and the torture that was living with you fucking assholes for all of my goddamn life. And it was like pretty much emotional torture most days. I hate to say it. I think most people, they're not too good at actually voicing their complaints. I'm pretty fucking good at it. I know exactly what the fuck problem is. You broke the covenant. Everybody else in fucking reality had their issues addressed. But nah, you let the trankers die on the fucking streets. You let me die on the fucking street. You think it's funny. And hey, if we're not dying on the streets, you better throw us in prison first. And if it's not that, make sure that it's $2,500 for rent or $45,000 for a car or, you know, $17 for a meal or, you know, all the shit that you do to fucking destroy me. And yeah, I long for something like an actual fucking whip on my back compared to the passive aggression bullshit suppression that I have dealt with since I was like 13 years old and I had to sneak around smoking my first joint. And I'm sorry, I know you don't think drugs are a big fucking deal or it doesn't matter or something like this, but I really care about this the way that people cared about the prohibition. You can't tell me what, you know, all I want you to do is let me live my own life. That's it. That's the only thing I actually want you to do. If you came back every year and you're like, hey, the government didn't get anything done, but hey, we didn't have any foreign wars and, you know, we didn't change anything crazy. We didn't try to end Roe v. Wade or anything fucking fascist or anything shitty like that or anything, right? We just didn't do anything this year. And I'd be a lot happier if they were just honest about it. But they were also like, yeah, but the prices didn't go up. You know, honestly, honestly, it would be an honest to God miracle. Jesus baby cried or whatever. Fucking miracle. Fucking certified fucking 4 miracles of a saint kind of thing. It'd be a fucking miracle if the prices didn't go up. And I don't really understand how that's feasible for fucking America, for the prices to just go up all of my goddamn life. That's not how any other market works, but our market does. The prices went up all of my goddamn life, from the gasoline to the milk to the food to the fucking education to everything. The prices all my life since I was 5 years old. I remember when I was 5 years old, a Big Mac meal was $3.99, and you would scream bloody murder about how much ripoff that was. $3.99, and you would be like, oh my fucking god, no, I'm not getting that for you, son. That's too expensive. No. And you'd be like, oh my god, that's I remember this. I remember sodas were like a nickel to 25 cents and shit like this. And all of my fucking life, your suppression got worse, your drug war got worse, your gangs got worse as you let this black market go worse. You never acknowledged one of the most solid truths about humanity, which is that the consequences of drug abuse are being a drug addict. You don't need to step in and send us to fucking jail, you piece of shit cocksucker fucking fascists. You don't need to send us to fucking jail. And I think I've said my piece. It's very seldom that a man or anybody, a woman or anybody really, can full-blown lay the entire fucking problem right the fuck out in front of you. It seems unfair that pretty much everybody at least was addressed. But there's not even remotely any talk about ending this drug war. We're lowering the prices. I mean, you do talk about lowering the prices, but see, we're at this crisis level where, like, literally last year, the gasoline needed to drop to half the price of what it is right now. Last year, it needed to happen. And I don't know. I'm sorry. I know that we can't fix this stuff. I know that you're just going to keep charging more money and make it more expensive to live and try to fucking suppress us and kill us right at the source and block the fucking sunlight so none of the weeds can grow or whatever your fucking weird Illuminati fucking bullshit is, right? But understand that, but understand, I see the fucking suppression for whatever the fuck it is. I will not suppress it because I'm on camera. I will not paint it as something else. You're fucking digital. You're 30 years a digital fucking serf, and you're fucking 30. Well, really, it's been about 90 years of fucking your drug war empire fucking debacle. 90 years of your drug war debacle never saved a life, only cost millions. And it only costs billions in cash. Millions in lives, billions in cash. And all you did was fund the cartel. You're so fucking piece of shit suppressive that I don't want to live on the planet with you. We demand that Elon takes us to space like some kind of let us eat cake thing. Elon, take us to fucking space so we can get away from the piece of shit, passive aggressive, piece of shit, suppressionist leadership, bullshit ass fucking assholes who charge way too much for everything that we need to live. Suppress us, build 55,000 jails for 50 state colony and all this other shit that they fucking do. Build fucking space wars and all this other shit and space this and that. It's just insane. It's like, it's okay, but it's not fun to live with you guys. I forgive you. I love you. I will live with you. It's okay. It's like that song, Future Foe Scenarios by Silver Sun Pickups. All throughout the song, he says, it's all right. It's all right. He just says it over and over again. He's like, it's all right. Remember, it's all right. It's all right. It's all right. We can have this dispute. You can come between me and my new darling. You can try and suppress everything that I fucking do. You can try to fucking throw me in jail for drugs or chase me or frown on me or shame me or pariah me or cast me out. But I'll hit you with your own biblical fucking idiocy. The stone that the builder refused shall be the head cornerstone. And trust me, I will take the head cornerstone just by letting the society know that they're not alone in feeling suppressed to the point where they're just gonna die a digital fucking serf, denied the pain relief that they want from the fucking torture that was living in this fucking society the last 30 fucking years. And sure, we kill your fucking HMO fucking figureheads. We shoot up your schools. And not that I do these things, but I'm talking about like our community. It does crazy shitty things like Uvalde fucking Texas, because we can't really handle living like this. We can't handle your war profiteering of all the things that we need to live. We can't handle the fucking digital serfdom. The entire goddamn world is on the cell phone internet, and they're all digitally inclined. Almost the entire fucking world. But they can't monetize themselves. You've choked it up from that fucking point beyond coding. You know, they can't monetize themselves. They're digital fucking slaves, essentially. They can't sell anything digitally except Etsy and fucking Amazon and shit like this, like real life products and stuff. Like you have suppressed an entire digital fucking culture, and I'm at the top of it. I'm the guy who literally plays MMOs all day in my weird fucking MMO empire, and talks about the quality of life between like real life and the MMO. I would rather live in an MMO. It's a lot less scary, a lot less suppressive, a lot more free, and a lot more happy and joyful. That's a sick, sad fucking state of affairs when the world that you fucking assholes built and suppressed and destroyed is less pleasurable than an MMO. It's fucking silly. You want to know why I'm such an MMO fucking fiend? It's because, yeah, living in your world sucks dick and I don't want to go back to it. Sorry. I know you don't like the truth, but I mean, it is the goddamn truth. Your world fucking sucks dick and I don't want to go fucking back to it.
Oh, that you have a number of people saying that the big thing here is
about your world. I mean, like everybody's world. Like, I don't know what to do about this. I can't make a like a Gandhi sea change and march to the sea or whatever the fuck. I don't believe I can do this. I don't think I can save this. The suppression is so deeply entrenched that I think the middlemen have hired middlemen to take over the middlemen's jobs after the middlemen die of old age. And I think it's literally insured and covered and paid for at this point, and the fucking middlemen are literally insured and paid for to the point where they're gonna come be middlemen long after the current middlemen who are fucking us die of old age. I think the middlemen are law now, and it is killing this world. It must stop. It must stop. I don't know what to do. But I can point out the fucking problem. Anybody with some emotional intelligence can pick up on it right the fuck away. Is everybody's unhappy. Why are we unhappy? Well, it's because you kind of choke everything that we need to live, and basic things make humans really fucking happy. You all know what makes women happy. It's chocolate and laughter. You know what makes men happy? I don't know, guns and sex or whatever. The people are simple things. People are simple. They're, you know, a person is smart. People are dumb, panicky animals, and you know it and all this. But people are simple things. And this reality that you built, it removes the simplicity of their lives. It replaces it with this bullshit ass middleman reality where you can't even open a lemon stand anymore without the middlemen suppressing trade, suppressing your race, suppressing your gender orientation, suppressing your fucking like your race orientation, like suppressing you digitally, suppressing digital funds, suppressing people like with, you know, like crazy weather machines and crazy alien stuff, whatever you fucking believe in. The suppression, it is constant. The entire world is chains and churches. I'm sorry, sooner or fucking later, somebody has to say something. I think we all can say something like, oh, the world's ending and we don't know why. But we can't really put our finger on it. But I think all the time, I think I have put my fucking finger on it. You have war profiteer charged everything that we need to survive so badly that we don't get what we need to survive or get the basic things that give us joy. We don't seek each other out anymore because you've made us so goddamn competitive. Everybody's out to kill each other. And, you know, and your prison industrial complex opened 55,000 jails for a 50-state fucking colony. A 50-state colony needs 55,000 jails? Do we even need that many fucking cities? Do we even have that many cities? But this was the tip. It seems like jail was your solution to fucking every single problem in the fucking world. I understand it. It often is. Jail often is the answer to most problems in the world. It often is. I understand why you think this, but it's not the answer to drugs. It's not the answer to selling digital currency. It's not, you know, I'm sorry, but it's not. It's just not. You know, and that's all I have to say about this. I've got to get off this before I sit the soapbox, sounding like fucking Hitler again. I can't fucking stand this shit. I constantly take the soapbox and I yell at 7 billion fucking people like they're listening. They're not fucking listening. They're worried about how much money you charge for everything. They're not listening to anything but money. The only thing they listen to is money.
And then to experience the liberating experience of coming out. And so with all that, you have a number of people saying that the big thing here is that the government is actually taking the steps to collect the evidence it says that it's lacking. Right? There are plans to set up a clinical trial into the use of puberty blockers next year and recruit the first patients by spring. Streeting, saying that the study would help establish a clear evidence base for the use of this medicine, and with that, the ban will reportedly be
if an American child wants a help procedure from a fucking surgeon and they pay good money or their parents pay good tax money for fucking healthcare, then give the child the fucking surgery, you piece of shit fascists. It's not that fucking hard. Your weird transphobia has messed up this issue. But no, it's about an American child getting a fucking health procedure covered by their fucking insurance. It's not that evil. It's not that big of a deal. It's not a big deal. It's just not even a big deal at all. But you needed to make it one because you actually are transphobic. And by you, I mean pretty much this entire fucking culture. I mean like everybody pretty much. And so and it just sucks. It sucks that you have to battle this in court. It's just weird. Your decency should have solved it in the public's eye a long time ago. You don't have any.
revisited in 2027. And this is in the meantime.
You don't have any.
To note is that the transgender youth already taking the medication, they can continue doing so. And minors there who experience puberty at a normally early age, they'll still be able to receive new prescriptions for the medication.
Oh, good. You're not just gonna make them go cold fucking turkey off their fucking trans drugs, because that's pretty much my idea of a nightmare. There was a pretty good film called Hedwig and the Angry Inch that was kind of about this. What happens if you get a sex change reversed a bunch of times? Snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap. All right. And, and I would say that I've just never really not seen most of all of America not be transphobic. I think I'm almost the only one. Besides the trans people. I'm like the only one. Because it's fucking weird. It's fucking weird. You guys put them out there on the fucking pedestal. You shine that fucking lighthouse light on them. And you talk about their kids getting meds. You talk about their bathrooms. You talk about how, like, I mean, I just don't, I mean, I don't see it as anything but transphobia. I'm sorry. What drugs they get covered by their insurance company is not your business. It should be illegal for you to even talk about it. Not illegal, but, not illegal, but I'm saying just it should be considered gauche and like really bad etiquette to even talk about this stuff, because it kind of is. Like, these people's lives and their surgeries and stuff are not the matter of the public's fucking ridicule or attention. Should not be the these people's poor lives, like not poor lives, but like these people's like issues. I don't know.
Of course, with this, you have people saying they're concerned that there are kids out there who could benefit from the treatment, but they're not going to be able to get it now. With them pointing to, for example,
you just cut them off cold turkey because you don't like trans people. It's really fucking weird. It's weird, and I can't really be convinced it's anything other than that. I'm sure you'll want to muddy the issue and be like, why should healthcare pay for some kind of gender thing? And I'll be like, well, because it's an American who wants healthcare. What the fuck do you care? I even really don't care if hair heroin addicts get Narcan given to them. You know what I'm saying? I don't care about that stuff. It's doctors trying to keep people healthy. It violates the Hippocratic Oath not to. Trying to say that these kids can't get their meds is so fucking fascist and crazy to me, and anti-trans. It's just disgusting. And you get an example of what even I hear in the headlines as I bitch about the fact that you've turned the entire world into the suppression machine from Neff's compound. You know what I'm saying? You turn the entire world into the suppression room. It's disgusting. You become Skeksis and you're farming the crystal. It's disgusting. I'm going to die. I'm going to die because you have terrible problems about weight limitations. It's so annoying. I don't know what to do here. Drop that. Yeah, drop that. Ah, you're so annoying. Complain all night long. Complain. I know it's mostly complaining. But the problem is, I don't think most of the world is really aware how unfun it is to be around you. To watch what you charge for things, to watch what you consider to be decent, I consider to be foul. Like, I don't know.
Waiting list for gender services in the UK. So unsurprisingly, trans.
Oh, good. Let's put them all on waiting lists. Like, you know, like that's always good when healthcare patients are on waiting lists. That seems great. Thanks.
Condemn the UK bit. For example, the head of one UK-based group saying the government is entirely disregarding the voices of trans.
Now you can see my comment comes from a place in my soul where decency abides, and I don't think about your weird, shitty anti-trans issue with trans kids getting their fucking meds or not or whatever. I don't truck with your bigotry or whatever, right? I just come from the human decency perspective, which is, a medical patient's not getting the drugs that they need. That's always really good for Americans, you know? And I just look at it from the decent point of view. Your anti-trans bullshit just doesn't fucking enter into it to me, for me. It just doesn't. It's just not there. That's a fellow fucking American. They get the same goddamn healthcare that Donald fucking Trump gets. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't matter how much money you have or what your problem is or what you need. It could be butt rot medication because you keep shoving your own fucking cell phone up your fucking ass so much that you got butt rot. I still want him to get butt rot medication. I don't care if he shoves cell phones up his fucking butt until he has butt rot. I still want him to get butt rot medication if he needs it. I don't care if he's got a fucked up habit of shoving cell phones up his fucking ass or whatever fucking weird metaphor I can use for drug abuse or, you know, being a trans person and needing transgender medication and all this stuff. It's just weird. It's like, it's a human, it's an American, it's a fellow American, it's somebody who needs healthcare stuff that shouldn't be denied. Going any further than that is just you being indecent and being anti-trans and all this other stupid ass shit that you actually are. Your decency is fucking dead. Dead as a dormouse. Just full-blown dead. Don't fear the Reaper. It's already dead and gone. Your decency's been gone for 15 fucking years. And money's your fucking god now.
Their deep opposition to the restriction of private prescriptions for puberty blockers during consultation. This also adds...
Why did you target this particular drug? It just comes across as anti-trans. And we all know who does this shit. I'm not gonna beat around the fucking bush. The right wing. You know, the bush. I did beat around the bush, excuse me. You know, Bush.
We're even
The
seeing...
Republicans, they do this. They go hunting for some fucking they go hunting on some anti-trans tip, trying to prevent trans kids from getting their fucking meds. And you ever hear a Democrat doing shit like this? I don't think so. I don't think so, no. I don't think so. I want to teleport out. I will lose the progress. I haven't done these yet. No, I will lose the progress, but I'm full. I've got to get the fuck out of here. I need to go to bed. It has been 14 hours, and it's time to stop. Today is Pantheon Rise of the Fallen Day, and I intend to go hard on that motherfucker. So it's actually a launch day, and I stayed up until 4 in the morning, like 4:20 in the fucking morning, like a fucking asshole. I don't know why I did this. I'm going to stop now. So I love you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Check me out in about 10 to 12 hours, and I'll do, 14 hours of fucking Pantheon Rise of the Fallen or whatever the fuck, depending on how playable it is. I didn't see that playable of a game, but what do I know? We're going to see. I'm open-minded. We're gonna go in. I'm assuming that it's good because a bunch of nerds said it was. So we're just, we're gonna go in and we're gonna assume that it's good. And I don't know. That's just where I fall on Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. So if you guys want to see Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, tune into Skycat later on this day. It's like fucking 4 in the morning. I'm going to fucking bed now. Come to my Twitch, come to skycat.live, come to my Twitch, come to my YouTube, come to my cat face and click on the cat's face to donate. It's a PayPal link. Come to skycat.live and come to my various different websites and give me some love. I have thousands of videos on my YouTube channel, and I have recorded this session in its 13-hour and 55-minute length, and this session will be placed on my YouTube channel, whereas there is thousands of videos, as you can see reflected here. I have something like 2,200 videos on my channel. Come check them out. I'm getting good solid views and stuff. Well, I wouldn't say that I'm getting good views very much. I would say I'm getting steady views very much. Steady, pretty steady, I would say. So, and it's been steady for like 3 years, and steady is okay. That means that you probably deserve to be there. If you can keep the butts in the seats, you can probably stay there. So I am optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm happy, and I think I'm doing good. So this video is going to stop here, and and just a reminder, this video will be placed on my channel over the next 24 hours. The video stops here. I'm going to do the station identification one last time. Come to Skycat Live. I'm a full-time variety gamer all day, every day. Put me on in the background. Click on the cat's face, donate. Come to the Twitch or the YouTube. Give me a like, sub, or follow. Come to my website, skycat.live. Come to my YouTube. There are thousands of videos there. Ending the video. I love you. Thank you. Goodbye.